friends, glad to see you all on Fagin Live. It is Sunday, March 26th. Time is 10 p.m. in Kiev and the same time in Moscow. Last night we switched to the summertime, so now our time matches. Maybe it will make our situation better with those who are watching us from Russia online. But in any case, I call upon all those who joined us. There are already 60,000 that joined today. Please continue sharing links, clicking the like button, that is important. And we're spending day 396 with Alexei Arestovich. Hi, good evening, Alexei. Good evening, Mark. Of course, do not forget to subscribe to Fagin Live, to Alexei Arestovich, and if you haven't done that yet, to Privateer Station if you are watching or listening to that stream in English. Alright, let's start from important and main. I don't know which epithet is more accurate, but yesterday Putin made a statement that as an answer to shells from Britain with depleted uranium, he is going to transfer tactical nukes to Belarus. And it was important for him to mention that the weapons are not technically given to Belarus, they're just placed there on service, managed by his military. That's secondary. The main part is that he ventured to make this step. It doesn't lead to anything, but it did happen after Xi Jinping's visit to Russia. Many people commented differently. How do you see that situation? Is it a step to escalation, an obvious one? And are there going to be any consequences to previously non-nuclear Belarus? I have four. First, this weapon is closer to Vilnius NATO summit. This will be a very short distance to it, less than 100 kilometers from the place where Russian tactical nukes will be placed, so this is the place where the heads of NATO will be making key decisions in July. Second, it is a huge quarrel with China, because in a joint communique signed by Xi Jinping and Putin, and I forgot the number of that article, 7 to 12, they did mention that both sides are true to non-proliferation of nuclear weapons and not transfer of nuclear technology to third parties. Not even 4 days later, when Dmon Medvedev comes out and says, oh, well, give our nukes to Belarus. So even Putin had to come out and correct him and say that, no, we're not transferring it, we're just placing it under our management, because otherwise it means that they'll be training Belarus army to use it, and it's the whole violation of everything nuclear, all the nuclear treaties. And it's another way to control Belarus, because these nuclear weapons will of course be guarded by Russian troops, so it is an excuse. And if all the Russian troops are in Belarus, even though temporary, are placed there, then the base with nukes is a permanent base for Russian troops there. For the first time they get... So until now everything was rented, temporary, and now it is solidifying. And this is a way to also provide pressure against Belarus and China Union. It is a pressure against giving higher diplomatic value for China during summit in Samarkand. So that's Putin's pushback. And to Xi Jinping trying to interfere with post-USSR space countries. And of course it's direct pressure against NATO countries, because this motion is generally targeted against the NATO countries. Because in order to use tactical nukes in Belarus, Russia doesn't need to transport them anywhere. They're already good where they are. So this is their usual KGB method. Making one move, they're trying to attack different targets on the board. What is important here, in my view, is the quarrel with China. Because China repeatedly made statements that no, we're not supportive of any nukes. And now after his visit to Moscow, they're making this situation. It's not a direct one, they're kind of crawling sideways, but it's still a spit on the back of Xi Jinping. And China needs to find a way to react to that, to support their promises that there'll not be a nuclear threat. And this is one of the victories of Xi Jinping as the intermediary in finding peaceful solutions here, or finding some solution with this war. And this essentially is a spit in his face or back, whatever you take. But it probably means that Xi Jinping refused Russia to partake in refused Putin's aspirations to partake in his military endeavors. And he, by the way, we did mention, right, that he left Russia a day short of his visit. He had 3 days planned, and he left after 2 days, on the morning of a third. So they did not agree. And what Putin does, he escalates. He even sets China up. You know, Mark, when I think this war will be over, when the West and China will unite their forces against Putin. You realize, right, that, Alexei, this is a suicidal step that he's doing now? Yeah, I think so. And he's definitely walking real fast in that direction. All right. So, to catch up with the same topic, France called upon Russia to review the decision to place tactical nukes in Belarus. And John Kirby, strategic communications coordinator of the White House, made a statement that so far, United States do not see signs of those nukes being actually placed in Belarus. And, of course, Kiev is calling upon the Security Council of United Nations because of Russian decision to position nuclear tactical nukes in Belarus. That's what's confirmed by Ukraine. So, will they place, will they not place? I think, of course, they will. But do you think, Alexei, that would mean that some nukes might also be placed in the NATO countries along the border? For example, in Poland, in Baltic countries, as a responsive measure? Because in July on NATO summit, they may make this decision. They might, Mark. They might not as well. We'll see how it unfolds. But I think the focal point of this is not that. I think that, let's look at it from a different angle. Remember last week Russia was screaming that American strategic bombers were flying not too far from St. Petersburg side of Russian border? Yeah, one bomber carries way more weapons than all these stations they were talking about placing in Belarus. You know, in the West, Mark, there are two big parties. I was recently in a summit, my travel, that the West is now discussing going away from the formula that Ukraine should not lose to the formula Ukraine must win with an exclamation point. And in order to prevent that transfer from happening, Putin is making all these mistakes. He's working fully to address that transfer. Because people who are saying that Ukraine must win are becoming louder and louder in the West, and they're consolidating their effort. In Russia, they understand that. They are scared for their lives as a result of it. In Putin's leadership, they understand that that would mean the end of not their war, but their rule and their lives, likely. And they're doing everything they can to give more ammo to the party of peace, so-called, on the West. Because what's modern West today is, it's a very peculiar structure with strong, peaceful doves and very weak warhawks. It used to be like that before. Not always, Mark. There were times during Reagan administration. Oh yeah, even Reagan himself was a hawk, right? So now Russia is trying to prop up the peace devs and give them more ammo to push their agenda. Because for Putin's regime, Ukraine must not lose is a better agenda than Ukraine must win. We understand they're not already talking about any victory, but at least they're trying to negotiate the size of their loss. And his personal destiny is hanging on that. And here he continues with his old line, even after meeting with China, where they demonstrated friendship and shook hands and all. Now he's basically using that whole tactics. Hold me 7, because I'm gonna kill everybody, push my agenda through. So he, in this case, gives a big nod to the extreme side of the Republican Party, the one that's peddling isolationist politics. He's maybe hoping for Trump to react to that. Different analysts have different points of view on this, Alexei, but yours is interesting. All right, we've been about 12 minutes live. There have been 213,000 people with us already. About 60,000 of you clicked the like button. Please do not forget to click the like button. Alexei is, playing his 25th frame rule here, prompting you to click the like button. It's important. All right, so let's maybe see what's up in the front, just in general. Let's bring the map up. On the front we have several statements made by Ukrainian side that the enemy's activity near Bakhmut is running out of steam. What is characteristic is that new battalions, new detachments that they're bringing to the front are moving to Avdiivka, not to Bakhmut. So the intensity decreased, right? Prigozhin did talk about the flanks there. The first Prigozhin, he was screaming that everything is bad, everything is awful, nobody supports him. Putin, by the way, did mention about the shell hunger in his speeches, that they don't have enough of those, and he was trying to dispel these things, these posts made by military that they do not have enough resources. And a couple of days ago, one of their propagandists on the first channel was actually pointing the finger towards Putin, saying that it's the leading commander who should be blamed for any deficiencies in the army for 20 minutes, right? And that's, even though it's a propagandist channel, we understand how it works, right? The fact that somebody is actually talking about possible Putin's blame in this whole conflict, this is a huge deal. As we know, 20 minutes on a modern TV is a huge time. Usually you have 4 or 5 minutes for an interview. So 20 minutes on a popular show, that's a big thing. So Putin is dumping a lot on military. Military are dumping and pushing back on Putin. Then there's Prigozhin, who is dumping on everybody, and Girkin, who is dumping on everybody and Prigozhin, and Kadyrov, who is reportedly sick and nobody knows how long will he live. And there is also a quiet and evil FSB walking in the shadows of all that group. So we can see there is definite conflict brewing. And Prigozhin number 2, the husband of Russian singer Valeria, and his leaked conversation with Akhmetov. Because we probably should talk about conversation, but let's wrap up the front first. The enemy is definitely running out of steam there. So you think Bakhmut is not really threatened? In Bakhmut, it is difficult fight, difficult tactical fight, but it's controllable. And our military reporting that there's no intensity, there's no pressure like it was just a few weeks ago. So look, if the president, the Speaker of Russian Federation number 1, needs to talk about ammo hunger, about artillery shells hunger, that means that indeed they do not have much of it. This is different factors coming together. Artillery shells, the method of their warfare, that they are running out of 1,000 people every day in order to sustain this effort. It basically led to the fact that by now they're out of their resources. And Avdiivka is not really shaping up to be Bakhmut number 2 for them. Ugledar is also nothing to write home about for them. And in Kherson, we're continuing artillery duels. Yeah, there are a lot of local tactical fights, UAVs dropping grenades on the heads of soldiers, but there are no serious mass offensive actions. So the front is slowing down. Any army, if you know, super motivated, even, I don't know, some Starship troopers, after 3 months of forced attempts to attack, they'll run out of steam. The Western expert community already started to talk about Russia going to strategic defense. I don't think Russia is going to strategic defense and has lost all the hope for any strategic offensive maneuvers. We'll still see some of them later, but right now they cannot carry them out on a high level. They can only do on the operative tactical level. And they also need to exhale, to take a breather, and we'll see what happens in the meantime. So I do expect good news in a short historic time frame related to our counteroffensive. Even though our Minister of Defense asked to not talk about that, I'm not in official capacity, and everybody's talking about it. I as well might. So what I want to say, let's go back to Prigozhin number 2, the other one. All right, let's go back to another Prigozhin, Alexei. And Farhad Akhmedov, his other part on the phone. So this conversation highlights the conflict in the Russian elites. Everything is lost and there are no perspectives. I understand that our command and military political leadership is not going to wait till Russian people of power will ripen themselves. Our military are going to help them to get to that condition faster. And I think that breaking point will be when our troops reach the Crimea and reach the top of Crimea Peninsula. We talked about that many times. It is a symbolic loss for Putin if Crimea is taken. This is one of his jewels, as we called it. And this would be a moment when he will have to think about his future. And Russian elite will have to start thinking about the necessity of making decisions about their leader. Because right now it's difficult for them to talk about any conspiracy, although they all understand and share reality. They need to get to the point where they can look into each other's eyes and understand that, and I'm talking about oligarchs, about FSB generals, military generals, and his inner circle, who would just look into the eyes of each other and understand that, perhaps even without much coordination, that he needs to go. And it might unravel really fast if somebody a group of them come to their office and just strangle him there. And I think this is where it goes there. And our counteroffensive is definite big push to that scenario. And given that he is an idiot, personally, on the personal level, he's an idiot. He's quarreling with the West with that nuclear move, and he's spitting in the back of Xi Jinping, who just promised that there'll be no nuclear escalations. So how many allies does he have left in the world? I think even those who are his close friends are already looking for a replacement for him, because the grandpa pretends to be insane. He is sane, but he is playing as if he is insane. And he's playing a really dangerous game there for them. So I think in the next few months it will be very entertaining in this regard. All right, 254,000 are watching us, 88,000 click the like button. Alexei is traveling today, so the sound may not be ideal. We talked about that. Hey guys, thanks for having some sound here. I'm basically in a roadside pub from a service room giving an interview of that caliber. Yeah, Alexei, sorry, we are in a good studio while you're traveling. But speaking of that Prigozhin #2 conversation on the phone, I think every second in Putin's top is talking in the same manner on the phone. Perhaps now, after this one was leaked, they'll be a little more accurate. But the main figure is Akhmedov in this conversation. Prigozhin is a entertainment figure, producer who immediately ran to the TV screaming that it's deep fakes and neural nets that are faking his voice. And Akhmedov is indeed a big figure. He is a member of the Federation Council. I don't know if he is still active because he is overseas at the moment. He's, well, not overseas, but outside of Russia. And the thing is, Alexei, they're giving strong remarks, right, similar to what we are saying in our streams. But what I see bad is that they do not have decisiveness. They're talking about, well, we'll live and see what happens. And it's understandable, they probably will not speak of action during such a conversation. Right, Mark, who will? Even they have some sense to not do that. But still, Alexei, I think we need to remind them, using sanctions, that there will not be anybody else to carry that out against Putin. Because they're complaining. Akhmedov is actually under all kinds of sanctions, British, European. He's saying that his boat got confiscated or frozen, and he lost a ton of assets, access to them. And Prigozhin, of course, also is concerned with that because his property outside. And they're all talking about relocation. And I think we should not even provide them this opportunity, because otherwise they will not do anything and continue exerting pressure on them. And if you don't like sanctions, then soon you'll have arrest orders in your names. So then the tonality will switch, well, no, please keep the sanctions, don't do the orders. And then the position of the Joint West should be then do something. So if you want to avoid the order, that is taken different in the world. They're starting to talk about, let's take half of their property in favor of Ukraine. My position is, why take half? Take everything. Don't even ask them. Take everything from those who made this money allowed by Putin's regime or working together with that regime in his elite circles. And I would say take everything and perhaps give them an option of having it back if they act, if they contribute to concluding this war. And I think they all talk about the same. But from one position to another, there is a huge distance, and they're cowardly. So that's why Prigozhin #2 starts to exert some activity and probe and see what's a good way for him to evade that issue, that situation. I think they need to be forced by excessive pressure from the West to make sure that they go and start talking about what to do, not about how everything is bad, and the motive should be a whip, not a chocolate. Mark, I don't think they will. Today is 23rd anniversary of Putin's election, the first time as the leader of Russian Federation, 26th of March 2000. They all grew up, and their businesses formed under him. He is more than just a president or leader. He is the background, he is an ecosystem of their lives. To rebel against that, one needs to be a very extraordinary person. You need to be some of those personages from It's Difficult to Be a God by Strugatsky. But they're flesh of that regime. They were never independent. They never allowed anything against it. And they cannot rebel against the core. They can only be complaining about it. I think we can lead them in a different manner to where we want them to be. Sanctions may actually, I think, consolidate some of them around Putin. I don't think, Alexei, they will consolidate. I think they'll be looking for a way to jump off. But what the West did, they gave an order. They gave an arrest warrant for Putin, and basically highlighting that there is a difference between you and Putin, but also we're telling you that nobody is untouchable. So I think it's a joint mass of signals that will aggregate. There's only one problem in this whole situation with weak hawks and strong doves in the West. The West still doesn't know what to do with Russia. They already know what to do with Putin. They still don't know what to do with Russia. If they had a good plan, they would be more decisive. But they're still looking at all the motions by the West. There's still some firm hand action that you can see. And it is now leading to get rid of Uncle Vova. I think the last straw that will break his back will be our counteroffensive. And the events after that will unfold in a really rapid fashion. They might actually, as we talked, also fall under the Iron Curtain if they find a way to explain the loss of Crimea and Donbass, because we will take it, perhaps as a second counteroffensive, but it'll be a very bright time, starting with probably with the event that happened with his arrest warrant and everything that will be happening in the rest of 23 and the next of 24, given that Belarus situation, given the bank crisis, protests in France that are widening, time is going to be interesting, and we don't know what decisions and who will take, but they will be pretty drastic and firm, because the scale of crisis will be so big that soft decisions will not be able to carry you through. And I think it's a good time for Ukraine, because during these times we have actually a chance of changing our life and changing our position in the world. We can use it to correct our stance in the global picture and to get rid of Putin and his leadership across the border. And there are not too many people left on the West who are still thinking that Putin regime must survive, but we'll see. All right, Zelensky, addressing counteroffensive question, said that everything that it hinges upon is the time frame of supply of new armaments. He basically pointed and said that's the main factor, right? Yeah, it is the main and single factor important. And Mark, supplies are coming. They're all coming, and one day they will be all here, right? Enough. Sooner or later, we'll have them in the right capacity. I just want them to be there sooner, Alexei, right? Right. So they're now competing between the supplies and whether which one gets there first. But in the meantime, Russia is wasting more ammo, more shells, more resources. So when the time comes, I think we'll be even in a better position when the command go will sound. So you think that situation with supplies, with military support of the West is not a cause for any concern? No, Mark, no, it is not. The fact they're late for a week or two, that's not a big story. We still don't know, right, what will hold us more, weather or supplies. But I think the time frame still stands. All right, we have about 300,000 watching us. Do you have more than 100,000? Oh yeah, more, 120. Good. All right. So in Tula regions of Russian Federation, it's not too far from Moscow. I've been there. Again, unknown UAV with a bomb fell out of the sky. This time it was in the town of Kireevsk. It's about 430 kilometers. I'm reading one of the Ukrainian statements. It's one of the public forums, and it fell out of the sky there, and it seems like Budanov is continuing to entertain their special capabilities, and that's a pretty good distance from the border, right? And these UAVs and some random setting ablaze of different structures on the territory of Russia, do you think that intensifies? Is it a test for the air defense systems that Putin has, or is Ukraine looking for options what to do next? Mark, I think it's the Ural Public Republic is fighting with Tula Republic. We don't hit the territory of Russian Federation. Everybody knows. When will you start, Alexei? Why would we, Mark? We're not the aggressor. We just have one goal of getting his troops off our territory. So, but we are not hitting them. So maybe partisans. Maybe FSB is blowing up themselves. In Jankoi, did you hear a very specific sound when Shahed hits the train with calibers? You know, that came through, that Shahed UAVs hit Russian train with caliber missiles. You cannot, mix that sound of Shahed flying for anything. So we don't know. Maybe they're fighting and quarreling with each other, or maybe their software gone awry. If I would be commenting that without connection to this conflict, I would be saying that maybe if we're taking the idea that it could be some Russian partisans, I would say they're testing the capabilities, the flight capabilities of that new weapon. It's testing that, it's testing how far and how correct can they fly, and also test what kind of air defense systems they will encounter to maybe one day launch, let's say, 200. Who knows, right? These Ural partisans nobody knows about them. Alexei, if 200 will take wing, that'll be FUBAR, right? How would you say that? I would really, I would say your assessment would be very correct in this case. 200 would do that. So if they're discussing that it's 200 Strij systems, apparently some Ural partisans have Strij systems, so imagine 200 of them flying in the direction of Kremlin. I don't think any other definition but FUBAR will describe it better. Well, I don't think, Mark, there'll be 200 of them, but I don't think they're strong only with that. They have other resources as well. So it may be very spectacular. You know, military partisans, they have very good fantasies, and good imagination. So Prigozhin, the Prigozhin number one, he said that after the end of contract in his Wagner troop, they already pardoned, and according to his words, they pardoned over 5,000 ex-cons from Russian prisons. How many of them remained alive, Prigozhin did not elaborate. So from his words, it means that he just let 5,000 convicts, ex-cons, who were biding their time as punishment for severe crimes against property and humanity. And now imagine 5,000 criminals let loose in the center of Russia somewhere. Oh yeah, this is an interesting social experiment. That experiment that they did in Ukraine, and the fallout from it now. It's the problem here, I think, is that we don't know components of this formula. How many people asked for pardon? How many of them remained alive? And even if we believe him that 5,000 were released, how many of them were alive? And how many did they lose? I think 20, 25,000 for sure dead, 30 at least. They're not even pushing back against these numbers. Those convicts who were captured by our Azov 2, which is a part of National Guard of Ukraine, and they're celebrating their birthday today as a detachment. And I congratulate, because these are people who are part of those who are standing with their lives defending the territory. Thank you for providing defense. And thank you for providing an opportunity for me and Mark to run these streams on the information front while you guys are fighting on the hot front out there. So coming back to this topic, they thought they figured out a universal civilizational solution. Take a lot of inmates and throw them on the front. And here you get a motivated stormtroopers because those whom doesn't go will get executed. But those whom Azov captured, I saw one, they said they had more. They already are saying that nobody really wants to go from prisons anymore. And they are recruiting old Wagner troops who served in that detachment before. Those people who are in prison, they prefer to stay alive because that lottery where 300 of them running towards machine guns and maybe 3 of them coming back, that's a pretty bad proposition. So imagine Prigozhin was right, and indeed they released 5,000 people who are technically outlaws. There was that Alexander from Turkey who streamed about Prigozhin. Alexander Kurara, right, is a criminal nick. He said one wise thing. It seems like he's got a long life experience. He said that you cannot change your colors. You cannot change your shape. If you are a criminal, you will likely stay criminal. So very high probability that these 5,000 people will stir shit up in Russia now and will continue their criminal activity. Who will be taking care of that? How does society react to that? All right, we've been live for 37 minutes, a little more left. I wanted to discuss with you elections in Turkey, because Erdogan, I think he's winning, but there is a strong fight happening. Well, he's a definite favorite in these elections because I think opposition has big issues. They could not offer a unified candidate, so they offered a compromise. And the compromise, in any case, is a weaker solution than one of the extremes in that situation. So, do you think his falling out of the negotiations and other activities around Ukraine is connected with election moment in Turkey? It did blip on the radar that he talked to Putin recently and asked him to try to de-escalate and maybe go towards peace. And he also thanked him for continuing his efforts with the grain deal to support the export. So he's got, what, a couple months before the elections. And of course, he trumped up a little bit of his effort because that grain deal is under his belt in the elections score in Turkey. And after the earthquake, it's understandable that on the verge of elections, Turkey really worked well the grain part of the deal. And there was an interesting aspect there that Russian goods were not be able to move for a while because of the computer glitch supposedly in the system. So after Russia signed a few things and confirmed their intent to participate, the glitch was alleviated somehow. So he is walking somewhere between one side in Turkey that is really concerned with Erdogan being occasional buddy with Putin, and the other side of Turkey who does appreciate Turkey being closer to United States and NATO. And Erdogan did talk to Blinken for about an hour plus in the airport. There are some signs about that, and it shows that the conversation was very detailed. So Erdogan, I think, has to walk between Scylla and Charybdis. Like in the old myth, he needs to play by the rules similar to what Russia is playing, and at the same time to play as a NATO member in the West. So he, as a master of political fight, is trying to teeter that thin red line between two sides. It's very complicated for him, but I think it'll go to his position being a little harder against Russia, I think. Maybe not too much hard, but harder.